The Extraordinary Advisor show. And as always, I have great information to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And we're having a really important conversation today about women in the industry and how we elevate them and bring more in. Like, this has been a conversation that has been happening, in my opinion, a little too long. Like, why hasn't this changed? And we all know there's a transfer of wealth happening. We need more diversity in the industry, gender diversity, racial diversity, all kinds of diversity. And today we're talking about why and how we can have women be more recruited and retained in the industry, and what are some of the issues in the way. And I have the perfect expert to help us with this today, and it's my friend Kathleen Burns Kingsbury. Kathleen and I met many years ago when we were both speaking at a conference and have stayed in touch. And let me give you a little bit about her official background. She isn't your average money mindset coach. She's a pioneer in really helping women and women setting them apart from cultural counterparts, really. So over 18 years, she specialized and dedicated herself to empowering women across finance, business, and entrepreneurship. She's a mentor to female entrepreneurs. She offers just really invaluable advice with her background in wealth psychology and client communication. And she extends her work working with financial advisors to help them really navigate the complexities of wealth management while fostering deep client relationships, which we know is so important. Her signature program is Unleash Your True Value: How to Shift Your Negotiation Mindset, Boost Your Confidence, and Close More Sales. And it's really, she's taken all her years of experience and through working with women executives, understanding wealth mindset, working with financial advisors, and her work, where I originally met her, was her work with helping people break through free from money silence. Mm-hmm. She's got a deep background. She graduated from Harvard Law School's program on negotiation. She served as an adjunct professor and has taught the psychology of financial planning in the CFP program. So if you're not familiar with her book or heard her speak, she wrote the book Breaking Money Silence: How to Shatter Money Taboos and Talk More Openly About Finances and Live a Richer Life. And that's not all she does. She lives in Vermont and skis, and I'm lucky when I can get her when she's not on the slopes or on a stage or working with advisors. So, Kathleen, welcome. It's so good to have you back on. This is not her first time on our show. I think it might be the third, maybe even the fourth time, but I'm really grateful that you're here.
Me too. I'm so excited to have this conversation. And like you said, it's so needed. And unfortunately, we're still having it. So hopefully we can make some progress on this topic.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. And so we're really going to be focusing on women in the industry right now. And why do you think it's so vital for them to be able to identify and communicate their value in financial services?
So it's important for all advisors to be able to do that. But when we look at the history around women advisors and the fact that even though our population is 51% female, the advisor has, in terms of women advisors, have stayed relatively low, around 23% if we look at certified financial planners. So I think the lack of representation, I also think that there is a persistent gender wage gap. Not only just in the United States, but in the financial services industry between men's base pay and women's base pay. And I really think that part of what women need to do, and this isn't across the board, I don't want to overgeneralize, but part of what women need to do and the industry needs to do is figure out, how can we stand on our value? How can we identify it, communicate it clearly, and then be able to advocate for what we're worth? There are systematic issues, but there are also issues where individually you can take matters into your own hands. And I think at a time, like you said in the intro, where women are inheriting more wealth, where women are more in the C-suite, where not every woman client is going to want to work with a female, but they certainly want the option, or they certainly want to see somebody in leadership that is a female, that it just makes sense that we really work to help women advisors take this next step if they're having a little trouble with it.
Yeah, and one of the things you and I have talked about is that because the industry is predominantly male, a lot of the training that happens has a more masculine approach. And that's not saying it's bad, but men and women
Right.
are different. And I know some of the women advisors that I've worked with, like the whole sales conversation can feel icky for them. And I think sometimes women don't go into this industry because they think that they don't want to sell. I remember when I was thinking about getting into the industry a long time ago, I worked at a brokerage firm in college, and I said to my friend's dad, who was really a mentor, his father founded the firm, I said, well, I don't think I could be in this industry because I don't like selling. Like, I don't think I could do that. And he goes, well, I don't sell. He was so far ahead of his time. He's like, I'm just serving people. And that just hit a switch. Like, so when with all your experience in working with people and women advisors, like, where do you see some of the biggest roadblocks in terms of them communicating their value?
One of the things you just highlighted is such an important piece, and it's our mindset around sales, around money, around compensation, around negotiating, all of those things. Unless we're aware of what our thoughts are and our beliefs are around that, it can be a roadblock. Some of us are aware and we go, we know that's a problem. Other people are just tripping themselves up without being aware of those mindsets. So a lot of the work that I do starts with really looking at what is your mindset around sales? What is your mindset around negotiating or advocating for yourself? And identifying what are the strengths that you have, because everybody has strengths, but also what are some of the things that get in the way, some of those negative thoughts. What is interesting is, even when I decided the title of my signature program, it was kind of hard for me to write close more sales. It felt like, oh, is that exactly it? It's so much more than that. But I think once we get to a place where we say, well, what does selling mean to us? And for a lot of women, it does mean service. For other people, it might mean something else. But when we can embrace that and really say, oh, we are doing something that's really valuable and we're really helping people, which I believe advisors are, we can get out of our own way. So I do think that is a huge roadblock. The other one, and I'm curious, I'm sure you've seen this in your coaching, is that imposter syndrome, that idea that somehow, even though we may be okay working with clients, may even be okay with sales, we just feel like somehow we don't have enough of what we need to have in order to charge a certain amount or order to go after a certain type of client. And so some of the work that I do, in addition to the mindset, is really confidence building.
Yeah, I love that. It's have you seen that it's not in addition to confidence and feeling that they deserve a seat at that table, or it's the conviction behind it and speaking with conviction so their clients get that they're confident. And I don't mean just making stuff up,
Right,
but
right.
like getting to the core level. So I'm curious, is that part of what you work on? And when someone notices, like, oh, I kind of feel like an imposter, what are some of the things that you coach them to do to transcend that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's really important for us to figure out why we do what we do and to really ground it in who we are. And when we think about some of the traditional sales training or some of the traditional professional development training, it's kind of like, here's a method, you need to follow this method. As opposed to, let's get in touch with who you are, what is unique about you that you bring this to the table, and then having people really stand in their unique power. Now, there are certain tools that certainly I use and a process that I use, but it's not that at the end result, you use my system and you're a great salesperson. It's you go through a series of really taking some time to figure out what is your unique value, not only in terms of like your certifications and your awards or anything like that, but also asking your clients or asking people around you, what makes you special? We don't often see our specialness in a way in which other people do. So having that reflect back, I think, is really important. And then once we identify our value, we really need to figure out, how do I communicate it in a way that it's going to resonate with my clients? So it may be client stories. It may be thinking about who's my ideal client and what are the stories for each of those different demographics. And I think there's another piece. I mean, there's a couple other pieces, but the other piece I'll mention really is around fee conversations. And even though advisors often have a range that they're operating in, it's really about being comfortable having a money conversation, being proactive, knowing that you deserve whatever that fee is, and really having a strategy in terms of when, where, and how you're going to bring up that fee conversation. So there's a variety of different pieces, and it's really coming together in the end of the program and having a true value plan that is really unique to you, that's going to help you go forward and close more sales.
Yeah, it's interesting how, as an advisor, you could think, well, I shouldn't have any money issues because then I would be an imposter.
Myth, myth.
But, but we can think about this idea of almost like an irony of expertise.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have 100% of your personal finances in order and that you are never uncomfortable having the money conversation. And I think that the more that an advisor can really be okay with that and figure out their own stuff, I think they'll be better able to serve their clients. I mean, have you seen that the case? Like they feel more confident when they've moved through their limiting money beliefs or
Oh, absolutely. I think for two reasons. I believe, and in every training I've ever done in the field, it's always been a self-awareness piece around mindsets, whether it's money mindset or something else. But I think if you are able to identify what your thoughts are, then you're not projecting them onto somebody else. I mean, a lot of people who under earn are actually projecting onto somebody else that they're not going to invest that in
Hmm.
financial services or coaching or consulting or whatever the profession is. And I really do think that if we understand our own money personalities, we can then get out of our own way when we're working with somebody else. Now, sometimes our clients have a similar money personality. A lot of times they don't. And so there is a money personality assessment that I use.
Mm.
And it's really fun to watch advisors who, delve into this to look at and see, how does my personality actually impact how I work with clients? And I'll give you a really quick story. I was doing a talk, and it's money stories and how money stories impact financial planning. It was all advisors in the room. And one woman said to me, she goes, I realize now that I know my money history, now that I know my money personality, that's why it frustrates me so much when somebody doesn't want to budget, or when they're, not an overspender, but just a spender. She goes, because I figured out I'm cheap. I figured out that I'm really, really thrifty. And my frustration isn't really useful for them because how they're spending is in check. So she was just able to see how her recommendations, how her approach, how her level of frustration or empathy really shifted according to her money personality. So it was kind of a cool piece of awareness.
I love that you're doing that with your advisors. I was lucky enough when I first started in my career to read a book by Kathleen Gurney. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar with her,
yes.
called
Yes.
Your
Yep.
Money Personality. And this was a long time ago. And it really had me looking at like what was my money history and how it's impacting me today. And I think there's onions in that. So like an advisor, I can imagine an advisor sitting in your audience might go, oh, I've looked at that. I talked to my clients about that. And there's more. Like I think there's always ways that we can learn more about ourselves. And I really appreciate the way that even in the talk where you weren't even working one-on-one or in a group setting with this advisor, she was able to see how that impacts her client relationships. So I don't think there's enough conversation about that, about how our judgments or beliefs can impact, you said projecting onto other people. And I don't think most advisors would want to limit their client success based on their own
And
stuff.
and it's, looking at your money personality doesn't mean that you're messed up around money. It doesn't mean anything other than you're human. And of course, you have to identify your blind spots. And when I was doing a lot of talking around the book Breaking Money Silence, one of the things I would have advisors do is I'd say, take off your expert hat, your imaginary little expert hat, put it aside for a minute and think about, are there money conversations in your own life that you are uncomfortable with? And typically, those money conversations, even with experienced advisors, were there. And they tended to fall into two categories. And one is the area that I focus now on a lot, which is salary, compensation, negotiating. The other ended up being kind of elder care issues in those conversations with our elderly parents. But whatever they are, we often have pockets. I mean, I've written books on this. I've done training for 20 years on this. I'm not perfect in my money personality. I still have spots where I need to work or get out of my own way when I'm coaching clients. So it is important work.
That you were reminding me as you were saying that, not necessarily with clients around the money conversations, but when I had my firm and I had 3 or 4 people working for me, I hated having
Mm.
salary conversations and raise conversations with them, especially, with certain employees. I just felt like they were never going to be happy. And I was nervous. I hated giving reviews because of that. And they were great. So it wasn't like I was delivering really uncomfortable things. But it's not just with clients that
Yeah.
this can impact. It could impact us with our team as well.
Absolutely, and I love that you raised that because it's both sides of the coin, right? There's you negotiating or advocating or having a review, and then there's also you giving that feedback. So for team leaders and managers, it's also important to really think about how you can engage in these money conversations. And we're not trained on the salary negotiation as much, and especially as a manager. Um, then we are, client conversations are a little bit more trained if you've been in the field. So it's just a new area of learning.
Yeah, and I love this because I'm also thinking back when I was in when there was a recession and my income, my assets under management dropped. My employees knew, like, that's how I was getting compensated, and I didn't realize right away how their money insecurities would come up, and I could not talk to them like I might about other issues in the firm because they were freaking out.
Mhm.
And so I had to be like really grounded so they wouldn't be worried.
Yep.
And I at first made some mistakes with that because I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just with money, it is emotional. It isn't always emotional, but there are certain times and scarcity when scarcity comes up. I know for me during the pandemic, one of the things I talked about publicly was initially, I was a keynote speaker and all of a sudden all my talks went away within, a day or two. So like your income's gone. And I thought, well, maybe I'll sell my shoes. That was my answer, selling my shoes. My shoes aren't even we were just talking about Jimmy Choos, not that expensive, but somehow I went into this thrifty Yankee mode, and then I realized maybe I could just diversify my services.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do you think the industry doesn't I mean, I know we're focusing on women, but I feel like I'm not saying women are all emotional and men aren't. Like, we're
Mhm,
not saying that at all, but these are more traditionally, if we're calling female or male kind of conversations. Like, why do you think this is so important with clients? They're emotional with money.
mhm.
Why do you think this isn't an area that the industry has spent much time focusing on or talking about?
I think for a long time, it's been considered a soft part of the job. Like these are soft skills as opposed to it's really hard to have these conversations or it's, behavioral finance and money psychology. While they've been around for a while, the acceptance that this is an important piece of the puzzle in the advising industry is only since the pandemic. We have conferences now, I think of Shift and some of the other conferences out there that really focus in on some of these important skills. I also think as advice becomes not the advice part, the human connection is so important that's really key because nowadays you can invest online, but what's the difference? Having a human helping you talk through these things, help you coach through your decisions, and that technical expertise is important, but so are well, so is, let me say this, so is the human side of finance, which I think of as money psychology, wealth psychology, good, difficult conversations, coaching around different issues. So I think we're getting there, but unfortunately at a snail's pace.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I see like how quickly AI is taking over, and hopefully you're using it as for good in your practice. I know Horse's Mouth is doing a lot of work with advisors on showing them how to maximize the use of AI. the other side of that is your clients are going to be using this too.
Mhm.
And the technical side, of course, you need to be good at, but that's going to be a lot easier, even easier than it's been for clients to get that kind of advice. So if you're not black belt in your communication, in your being able to really be a great listener, being able to really transform things for your clients, I believe you're going to get left behind. And more than ever, these are not soft skills, they're essential skills.
And I do think that the advisors coming up, so next gen advisors, they are really doing some really creative, innovative things and building in the psychology of money into their practices in a new and a unique way. So it's kind of fascinating to see the changes. And I guess, my commitment to women in particular isn't because I don't like men or I haven't coached or trained a ton of male advisors. It's just that I do think that our society and the financial services industry is a different culture for women on average than it is for men. And I want to help them navigate that. And I want to help them. And I've done this my entire career. I want to help them really, like I said before, stand in their power, feel valuable. I mean, I've had to do this in my own business of figuring out, what am I worth? How do I sell myself? How do I communicate my value? And how do I feel really good about it? And the last part is the key part. People need to get to a place where they feel really good about it because what happens? People start wanting to work with you more and more and more. So it's a process, and it just takes some support. And I know Ellen, you support a lot of women and advisors in that regard, and this program that I'm offering is doing it as well.
So, why do you think that firms need to really be focusing and investing more in their women advisors?
Well, a lot of people out there have probably heard of the broken rung, right? Where women are at least entering the field a little bit more than they used to in the past, but they're at about 7 years dropping out of the industry.
Mm.
And that is right about the time when you could hit your sweet spot. You could eventually, get into leadership and up to the C suite. And so I think the industry has to look at why is it that even if we're doing a little bit of a better job of recruiting women or people of color, why are they dropping out? And while certainly a professional development program isn't going to make or break it, it is part of the solution. And part of it is, I think, we need to change the culture. And part of changing the culture is just appreciating that people have differences. So let's offer programs that are women specific to really meet their specific needs around confidence building, gaining clarity. There's nothing like a group of women getting together and supporting each other. I'm not to say that men couldn't use this as well, or people who are coming from minority groups into the field, but I think the industry really needs to have a wake up call because. It's not just men, it's women and people who identify in a variety of different ways who are out there needing advisors. And we often want somebody like ourselves to mirror us and provide that service, whether it's I'm hiring somebody that looks like me, or at least when I go on a website, I don't just see one demographic. I see a variety of people and I go, oh, they get it. There's diversity of thought here. And I think it's really vital. I think there's a business case for it. So hopefully more and more wealth managers and wealth management teams will do this, and the larger firms will put some money into it because I think it's imperative for the future.
Yeah, I have seen some firms kind of throw a little bit of money at it,
Yes.
but
Mhm.
not as much. The firm that I had come out of, I think really well before it was like the cool thing to do, had women's conferences, and all the leaders at the firm would show up for the entire conference. They wouldn't just
Wow,
show
that's
up.
unusual.
It was
It
unusual.
is unusual.
And they didn't just show up to like give a little talk and head out the door. And what they would say is, we love this conference because women are different than men in terms of the way they share. So we're okay, generalizing, but there's a lot less positioning. Like,
Mhm.
this is what I have in AUM or whatever, however people position, and more like, oh, that's what's going on with you. Here's how I've done that.
Yep.
And not as tight around their best ideas, but really sharing them. Then they were always my favorite conferences to go to, for sure.
Well, and what I love about that, and I actually was just coaching somebody the other day who was a leader, that Even if you feel like you don't belong in that room, say it's a women's conference, it's really important if you're leadership that you attend, that you don't. And I've actually had this experience as a speaker where someone walks in and says, "This is, a great women's event, and here's to it, ladies," and walks out the room. And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no." So I love that your firm did that way back when, and we need more. Um, we need more firms that are going to do that, more leaders, and you know this needs to happen in a variety of places. Gender is just one area. Um,
I absolutely. Um, okay, so a couple ideas for people listening or watching, that for women that want to maybe stand in their power a little bit more about money, about their business, have more conviction, or have an easier money conversation, whatever you want to share, Kathleen,
yeah,
just a couple takeaways that someone can put into action right away.
sure. One thing you can do is you can start a success journal. So this success journal will have you write down all your past accomplishments, but also going maybe weekly or monthly. You write down, what were your successes? Are they small, big? Write just down some details, because what we need to do is continue to have this loop telling us, oh, I did this really well. And to be able to get some of that feedback. And when you write it down, I'm a writer, so some other people might want to use pictures or digital, whatever. But when you write it down, it helps reinforce that you did something good. And when you get to the place where you have to submit a proposal or get in front of a new client, you can go back and look at your success journal and pick out stories that are going to make sense, that are going to reinforce your value. In addition to that, I think you do need to learn how to advocate and negotiate for yourself. And I know that one of the things that I do is you can go to my website and sign up for free negotiation tips. You get one a week, very small email, and it just challenges you to negotiate in different ways. You just go to kbkwealthconnection.com and you get a tip a week. So you could do that. You could read a book on negotiation. Even if you don't feel like you're negotiating with your clients, you need to know those strategies and how to work in a persuasive way. And I think lastly, if you are really struggling, or maybe you've been in the field a long time and you want to bump to the next level, think about working with a coach. Find somebody who's going to be a good fit for you, because certainly as a coach and having had lots of coaches, it's been invaluable for me. And I know it's invaluable for others. And I think most top producers at least work with coaches from time to time. It's kind of an investment in who you are.
I'm actually shocked when I'm talked to an advisor who's never worked with a
Yeah.
coach. And I know I had one for whatever, met the entire time I had my practice practically, and she was my most trusted advisor. And now I'm in a different kind of community with
Mhm.
other people doing the kinds of things that I'm doing, speaking and coaching and writing and all that. But I have mentors, and I've always had people that I could lean on to go with questions like that. Well, I think that's beautiful. And Kathleen, I know if people want to learn more about your coaching, your programs, I'm going to go sign up for your negotiating tips. I know I'm on one of your email lists, but not that one. So I'm excited to get those every week. I know you have something coming up.
Yep.
How can people get in touch with you?
So the easiest way to get in touch with me is just to go to kbkwealthconnection.com. I am having a free webinar on March 15th, which I'm excited about, at noontime. That's Eastern time. And I'm going to be talking about what are the 5 pillars of unleashing your true value. So you'll get to understand a little bit more about the process and have an experience with a group of like-minded women advisors. So you should definitely check it out. The URL is up on the screen right now to sign up for free.
That's great. And you should absolutely do that. Kathleen is amazing. She has such good information and so much experience. So go ahead and sign up for that. You'll learn more. You'll learn tips and you'll learn more about the work that she does. So again, go to kbkwealthconnection.com and then the /webinar women advisors to sign up for the webinar. And Kathleen, thank you. I'm so grateful that we've stayed in touch all these years and we're spending a little bit more time together now. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this information with our audience today.
It has been so fun to chat with you, and I love what you're up to. And yes, I do really appreciate our friendship. So thank you very much, Ellen.
Yeah, and thank you, all of you who are out there listening. And whether you're watching us live or watching on the recording, I'm really grateful that you're here. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to ellenrogin.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download my free report, What Extraordinary Advisors Know That Others Don't. And I have some programs coming up as well. So reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to stay in touch. And the question to ponder today is, how are you communicating your value? Remember, be great and create great every single day.